Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. We appreciate your attendance at our second quarterly luncheon for the Clay County Economic Development Corporation. We have a pretty interesting agenda today, a pretty interesting menu, we think. We've got two guest speakers that came in this morning from out of town to speak with us. The first speaker will be Destin Wells, who is Senior Vice President for Enterprise Florida, that will come in and share with us what they are seeing at the state level for economic development and how they like to partner with local communities. Our second speaker is Victor Leota. He has an organization, a company, Leota Location and Design, and they work on strategic sites inventory initiative. And we have engaged Victor and his company to review sites and available sites and usages throughout Clay County for us also. In addition to that, I want to say thank you to Clay County Development. Josh, I'll call on you in just a moment, but thank you for being our title sponsor. Also, Powers Development Group is our corporate sponsor today, and our facility sponsor is the St. Johns River State College and Thrasher Horn Conference Center. So can we give a quick round of appreciation to all our sponsors today? We have several elected officials with us. I love trying to not name everybody, so if I can ask an elected official, or if you represent an elected official office, would you mind standing so you can be appreciated? And we greatly appreciate the elected officials taking time out of their schedule to come and support this. So at this time, I'd like to call Josh Cockrell, the Executive Director of the Clay County Development Authority up. Josh, if you want to say a few words, please.
Thank you. I want to thank you so much, Crawford, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity, and Laura, to be the title sponsor. Really appreciate that. Just want to thank you all for being here. I think we're in the right track, and I'm interested to hear what our speakers have to say today regarding economic development and the future of this county as we continue to find sites to develop and promote. The Clay County Development Authority, some of you in here are familiar with us. We've been around since 1957. I see many familiar faces here that have served on this board over the many years. I've been there for almost 10 years now, and it's been an interesting time. We've gone through some interesting changes with the board and our organizations over those years to the point where we are now today, where we have earlier last year, we started assembling land on College Drive. So currently we have approximately 4.7 acres that were all non-conforming uses, commercially zoned properties that had homesteaded residences on them, so they were getting tax breaks. We purchased these homes, approximately 6 homes there, leveled those and cleared those properties, and now we're out marketing those properties to sell to hopefully continue the revitalization efforts of College Drive. And so then we can move on to another project. Pretty exciting for us. Some of y'all that have been here for a long time might remember the Harbor Road Industrial Park era when the Clay County Development Authority assembled those parcels over the years and constructed and developed the buildings there and sold those off and leased them over the years. It's a great time as well. I know interest rates are going up. It's terrible for most of us, but for the CCDA, helps us with industrial revenue bonds. We've been pretty quiet with those over the last several years. Those of you that are familiar with industrial revenue bonds, they're tax-exempt private activity bonds. Love to talk to you further, but able to secure lower interest rates than what the bank's conventional financing can offer. And this is for certain projects and types of projects. But exciting for us, we have used these bonds in the past to give you an idea. Developing Haven Hospice's facility on Blanding, several projects at St. John's Country Day School, as well as several projects out at Penny Farms over the years. So nonetheless, thank you so much for this opportunity to be the title, and look forward to chatting with you. Thank you.
I get asked quite often, hey, how's your relationship with CCDA and how's your relationship with the chamber? And so we thought this was a very visible example that we have a very good working relationship with our community partners. So we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. At this time, I would ask you to arise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do an invocation, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in the invocation. Well, Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy, Lord God. We thank you for the men and women of Clay County who are engaged and active in what this community is going to look like and be like, Father. We thank you for the food. We thank you for the fellowship. And we thank you for the love that you share upon us, Lord God. Bless this time and these people. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for that. It's a great time to be in Clay County. We're going to continue on with the program right now while you continue eating. So we want to keep everybody on schedule, but we did want you to see the video that we had put together. Evan's back in the back. He did a great job doing the video. So thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker for the afternoon. Destin Wells is the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Florida, which is a state economic development agency. So Destin will come and speak. He's going to give you a review of what they're seeing from the state level. He's also going to talk to you about partnering with local communities and what that looks like from the state and come down to Clay County. Destin has worked at the state previously. He has also worked as a local economic development officer in addition, and then he was hired back in as Senior Vice President. So with that, Destin, if you'd come up and share with us, and we'll give you a Clay County welcome. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Really pleased to be able to come up, spend a little time with you. Crawford, thank you for the invitation. These are really important times for us to get together and talk about what our communities are doing and how we're going to build a better future in our communities. And so today we got a really exciting topic for everyone. Dirt. So maybe that doesn't excite everyone off the get-go. But I will say that this is an absolute critical topic that we're seeing in economic development throughout the state. And it's those communities that are recognizing this and adapting to it that are the competitive communities winning opportunities, creating jobs where they are. So, all right, so just a couple of topics we're going to talk about. I always like to start with the mission statement. You know, what do we do? Why? Who are we? We'll go into a little bit of what we're seeing right now, the current activity at the state level. We'll talk about the state of site development, and then I want to talk about some resources and different places that we can go and organizations that we can partner with in the effort to make our dirt as competitive as possible. All right, so first the mission. I don't need my glasses so you guys can read. We create jobs, right? So my job, I'm the Senior Vice President of Business Development. I head up the team that's out there talking with companies, trying to attract them to come to the state of Florida. We sell Florida as a business destination, right? So that's a key part of what my team does. We also work with our local partners, with Crawford, with CareerSource, with any number of different partners that are out there to make sure that we're bringing all the resources to bear for our companies in Florida that they can grow and succeed, as well as bringing those companies in that are going to create jobs, invest capital, generate tax base, opportunities for friends, neighbors, children, all the good things that we are, why we do economic development. All right. Again, I can't really see what I've got here. Okay, this is what we do. All right, business development, my team, again, working with companies, getting them to come in. We also work on another side of things we call strategic initiatives. That's site development. That's Team Florida, which is the marketing cooperative of 19 different economic development groups. It's rural development, kind of all the other economic development that's not the direct work with a company. We also have, as part of our organization, International Trade and Development. They help companies export, find those foreign markets, garner those export sales. We go into foreign markets with these companies to help them garner those sales. Companies that sell internationally are more resilient and can weather economic cycles much more successfully. So we want to help our companies achieve that. MASBEC, which is the Minority and Small Business division of Enterprise Florida. We hold boot camps around the state with companies, trying to help them, give them the skills, bring them up to a certain place in their business where they have some funding opportunities, can maybe go in for some different loans. We do help with some bridge loan programs, access to capital. So focused on minority and small business, again, a part of Enterprise Florida. Military and defense, we help make sure that all of the bases and the military presence in the state of Florida is supported. We write grants to them when BRAC, which is when they're talking about closing bases or shrinking bases, comes up. These are the guys that go to the defense of the defense sector, trying to make sure that military presence is continually supported and growing in the state of Florida. The Florida Opportunity Fund is the venture capital arm of the state. That is also part of Enterprise Florida. And the Florida Sports Foundation, which all the different youth sport leagues and things all the way up to the World Cup, any of the conference football championships, things of that nature. This is the group that's working with them and making that happen. So I only want to mention this because that first one, business development, is what a lot of us know. Enterprise Florida does a lot more than that, and I think it's important that we share that. What do we have going on right now? This is a snapshot of the dashboard that I look at every morning, first thing when I walk into my office. This is how many companies we're working with. So that top line there, the 105, that's 105 companies that my team is actively working with right now on relocation to the state of Florida. That represents a potential 36,000 jobs and $15.7 billion in capital investment. And that middle line are the number of companies, the jobs, and the investment associated with our foreign direct investment, which these are typically 2, 3, 4 people, firms, foreign companies coming in just to get that foothold in North America and the United States. The really nice thing about those projects is we've seen many times that those in 3 to 5 years can scale rather significantly. So you can get them real small and grow them in the community. And so finally, that bottom line, how many companies and the jobs and the capital investment of what we're actively working on right now today. So we're working with 300 companies about coming to the state of Florida. All right, so we're supposed to talk about dirt, so let's talk about dirt. The first thing I want to mention is that this is, without question, the biggest constraint facing the state of Florida in economic development. Now, there's a couple caveats to that. It's the biggest constraint for certain types of activity, right? So like technology, financial professional services, things of that nature. A lot of times they want to go to a major metro area, some Class A office space. That's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about manufacturing. We're talking about industrial opportunities. Those are the ones that we really struggle to find the proper locations for these opportunities to come in. And that really surprises a lot of people because you look at Florida, it's such a big state. You drive down the highway, you look on either side, there's just sprawling land everywhere. You're like, what are you talking about? You can put companies everywhere. Well, land a site does not make. And there's a lot more that goes into it, zoning and entitlements and infrastructure and access and workforce and so many different considerations. So inventory constraint is a big challenge for us right now, and part of why we're talking about this and a big part of the work that we're doing right now. The site development spectrum. So one of the things I would also mention is that a lot of times people think that the site has to be perfect and ready right now. That's preferred. And in the current market right now, time is shrinking for companies considering where they're going to go. They want dirt. They want a facility today. And so when we're telling them that it's going to be a year before we can put in the proper infrastructure and they can start actually building their facility, more time, that's not good. So that doesn't mean that you have to, let's get our sites as ready as we can, but have the answers. If the site's not ready, there's only 2 things I need to know. Well, how long and how much money until it is ready? So we need to be able to answer those questions. So on the spectrum of site development, I know we always like to look at and we focus on that perfect site that's ready, that's marketable, that is pristine, which we want. But let's not lose sight of the others and make sure that we have the best information that we can on those. Knowledge is power. We get leads in from all over the world, and we look at the state of Florida. We talk with our partners and have continual conversations. Need to know what's going on, what are the opportunities in there, to see what fits. We'll send out these opportunities to our local partners in the communities and say, if this is something you're interested in, send us the information back. Help us tell your story. I can't tell you the number of times, never from Crawford, never from Clay County.
Thank you. Bless you.
But I can't tell you the number of times that I have communities from around the state that when I send them a spreadsheet about their site, about their dirt, they send me one back that says TBD all over it. TBD is the same thing as saying, oh. And uncertainty is the enemy of business, and is uncertainty. So knowledge is power. Know what the utilities are. What's the size of the line? What's the capacity? Who's the provider? Those are all things that we can be doing prior to a company coming in that would really set us up for success in those conversations. Ready sites, so that's kind of going in. Again, we want them ready as possible, but at least identifying the pathway to readiness is a critical consideration. It's something you don't want to lose sight of. Strategic sites inventory, we got the perfect guy here, Victor, who's going to be coming up in a second to talk about this. Victor and I have worked together in a number of capacities over the years. Great guy helping out the state of Florida to find out where the opportunities are. Sometimes that includes finding out where the opportunities aren't, but really critical in beginning that process to get us from, wouldn't it be nice if we had some land for some businesses to come to identifying where the high potential ones are and working them through the process so you do have a site that you can actually market and sell to a company. The site development program, again, this is something that my team is very focused on. It kind of went dormant for a number of years with the state. I've been back for 10 months now, and this is both a passion project of mine as well as an area of critical importance for the state. So we're talking to our partners and we're looking at the different types of programming that we can bring. We're talking with Victor about different types of programming that we can bring to our communities to assist them. Enterprise Florida, we're a multiplier, right? We're going to work with Crawford. We're going to work with the team here in Clay County and bring those resources to bear to further the effort. We're not going to replace it. We're just going to be a resource, a tool for the communities to benefit from. Find It Florida, so this is where we actually put all of our sites and all our information. So this is a public-facing site, has about 80,000 unique visitors every month. These are folks that are on there looking, actively searching for real estate, looking where can I possibly go within the state of Florida. And so communities that have their sites uploaded into Find It Florida, that have more robust quality information about those sites in Find It Florida, ultimately are more competitive. So one thing I don't want to say about site development, the big thing that communities can do to really help themselves is make sure that we're aware, right? So state of Florida is massive. I mean, it's 5 states at a minimum, really. 22 million people, 67 counties, 400 plus municipalities. I mean, it's a lot, right? And so to think that myself or anyone on my team could really truly understand every piece of dirt in this state is a bit silly. So it's the communities that reach out to, and Crawford and I have talked about this, doing familiarization tours, reaching out to, partnering with Enterprise Florida, either virtually or in person. Bring us up here. Let's walk the dirt together and take a look, right? There's no substitute for actually being there and seeing it. So that constant communication and understanding where those opportunities are is a critical consideration for making sure that Clay County is getting more leads, more RFPs, and more opportunities to compete. So some resources for site development I want to put out there. So there's the Community Development Block Grant. I believe Clay County is just over 200,000 people. I think I looked, it was 212-ish. Which this is for counties under 200,000, but it's also for municipalities under 50,000, right? So this is administered through the Department of Economic Opportunity. The grant cycle is open right now, actually. It closes in July. But this provides resource, and one of the eligible expenditures is infrastructure and support of economic development. So this would be one place that, if we're looking at how do we take a site from, we know it's okay, but it's got some issues, and we can fix that issue with some money. Well, these are the places to go. The Florida Job Growth Grant Fund. This is a program the legislature allocated $50 million to it that will be available July 1. It is for two purposes: site development and workforce development. So this has the ability to help run infrastructure out to sites to make sure that they are open and truly ready and available for that job creation, that company later. If you have ideas, talk to us. We're actually part of the review committee. I'm also offering us as part of the ideation and feedback group for you. So if you want a really strong application, talk to the people that are going to be reviewing the application. That's a really good pathway. So that's something I want to offer, is that's a good tool that's out there, and we're more than happy to partner with any community that has interest and talk about what makes a really competitive project, what makes one that's going to ultimately get funded. The Florida Department of Transportation, I love these guys. They got more money than they know what to do with, man. I mean, like, when we talk to them, if it's a good idea and they like it, there's going to be some money somewhere or other. I say that jokingly. They have 5-year plans, they have 10-year plans. But they are a great partner and a creative partner. I think that's something that's not understood or appreciated by a lot of people. You think, Department of Transportation, it's a pretty straightforward thing. Our experience has been that they've been actually really creative with communities in trying to solve different problems and challenges. So I don't have specific programs within FDOT that I'm pointing to, but I can say that getting them on the phone with a group of folks, like the local community, like Enterprise Florida, and talking about the challenges typically opens the window to some additional opportunity. And then finally, federal recovery dollars. This is something, we had a pre-meeting earlier and this came up a little bit. There's been so much money that's gone from the federal governments, and some of it's gone straight to communities, some of it's flowed through the state to communities. Those are actual eligible dollars for economic development and for infrastructure investment. And we've seen communities throughout the state choosing to exercise some of those dollars and put them towards site development, put them towards, running water or sewer out to that interchange. And now there's businesses that have the opportunity to build upon those sites. So those federal dollars are another resource that's out there. Lots more. This is just kind of some that came top of mind here. But dirt is important. Without dirt, you don't have anything else. You have the biggest incentive package the world has ever seen. You can have 1 million people in your labor force right down the road. If you don't have a physical location for them, it doesn't matter. So I know dirt was exciting. I appreciate you taking a couple minutes and listening to me stumble on about it. And we look forward to partnering with you and ultimately making Clay County as competitive as we can. So thank you.
I was looking to see if we had a microphone back there if we were going to ask any questions, but we might hold those to the end of it if we end up with some time and you've got some individual questions you'd like to ask for the group. So we might do that. So the next speaker is Mr. Victor Leota Location and Design. Victor has 20 plus years in the economic development spectrum, working for projects looking to locate on the site selection side of the table. He has also spent years developing a strategic sites initiative program that has economic development modeling based on what type of industry and what type of business you're looking for in a community. Victor is currently engaged with us reviewing sites across Clay County. And so at this time, I'd like to welcome Victor to the stage and introduce him to talk about specifically how his program reviews sites in a community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good to get some applause before I get started. You may not clap after. I get paid sometimes to tell people their kids are ugly. In all reality, what Crawford started with, what Destin reinforced, cannot be any more important than right now today in the competition for good job-producing sustainable tax revenue generating projects. I've seen a lot of communities that spend resources. Crawford showed a very compelling video about selling Clay County and the marketing background that Crawford has. He appreciates that, but at the end of the day, to Destin's point about if you don't have anywhere to put a company, it doesn't matter. But I have seen a lot of communities spend time and resources on really compelling marketing videos to promote a piece of dirt that would be last in 100 choices, because it simply hasn't gone through, it hasn't been looked through really with a prism of reality. It's somebody's pet favorite. They feel like this is our industrial park and we've been marketing it for 20 years. Well, why has it still got occupancy issues? Why has it still got availability? And so the competition has grown such that the investments that are being made with your neighbors, not just in the states, but in neighboring counties, but certainly in Georgia, North Carolina, and some of the states you compete with projects, South Carolina, et cetera, there's been a huge investment that's been made in hard dollars to prepare sites for development. And so what we bring to the table is finding that raw potential. The idea is that, as Crawford and Destin stated, the problem is having an available inventory that's ready for development. And what is that, when you say ready, what does that mean? And when you talk about the idea of having infrastructure availability for capacity, for potable water, sewer, natural gas, electric, internet, fiber, telco, et cetera. But there's a lot more to it when you look at the compatibility with surrounding land use, the idea of planning and zoning so that you're prepared to be able to apply for entitlements. Those things are also equally important. But from our perspective, we want to look at the development of the property. We start with the dirt proper in the sense that the SSI program, or Strategic Sites Inventory, the idea of strategic, it was born out of traditional industrial and commercial site selection. We did hundreds of projects over the years in taking an engineering and environmental-based approach to understanding where you have opportunities for development that have the path of least resistance for permitting, the least amount of impediments to development. And so we saw too many communities lose projects because they were jumping through hoops to try to find a piece of property when you had a prospect breathing down your neck, but that prospect was also considering dozens of other potential communities that had invested in dirt and had made the infrastructure availability there, and also clear title, and the sites were properly zoned for the intended use, and the entitlements were either predetermined or in position to be let. And so we backed up and said, why are we waiting on a prospect to come along? Let's get out in front of this. Let's take and create a program that we can look at property in advance and identify those that don't have a lot of environmental concerns. We're trying to avoid things like potential wetlands, threatened endangered species, other sensitive habitats. We also look at elevation, terrain, soil conditions, a lot of the physical characteristics about a piece of property. And so with that, we created, again, the Strategic Sites Inventory, or SSI program, which we've done. We started in our home state of Louisiana. We had hundreds of properties that have gone through the program and have gone to market and landed projects. And then we exported out of Louisiana, and Florida was really one of the first places that we began to implement the program outside of Louisiana. Clay County had the benefit of that with our initial search for property back in 2018. And it's continuing today with the idea of continuing to study these properties through due diligence and advance those sites to market. So the purpose of SSI is really a solution to the problem that was described by Crawford and Destin with respect to having dirt that's ready for development. We are not in a position, and we don't make, the idea is that we don't take a property all the way to development ready status. More so, we want to identify, again, that raw potential. So if you look at the phases of our program, the way it's designed, we start with what's called site discovery. We go into preliminary due diligence, advancement to market, formal due diligence, and then we have marketing and branding, which isn't necessarily chronologically last. But to my point earlier, too many times communities spend money on marketing and advertising to promote the community and promote a piece of dirt that ultimately has a lot of challenges, and they kind of end up being the dog that caught the car. I mean, now what are you going to do when you have someone show up, and then next thing you know, they find out the idea of being 12 to 18 months before you can turn dirt over. There's just too much competition out there. I mean, unless a company has a very specific reason why they want to be in your county, a lot of times that there's just too many other options out there that don't have the passage of time, which again translates into risk. So the idea of site discovery, we go through, we have from experience, we look at from, again, an engineering perspective, an environmental, ecological, from a cultural resource, we look inside the community for compatibility with surrounding land use, and we identify greenfield sites. This is raw land, not buildings, that we think has, on face value, the right physical characteristics that would be good for development. the same time, we also try to minimize the number of landowners. So there's plenty of dirt out there. I mean, there's a lot of geography that's untapped, but the problem is that if you have more than one landowner, it gets very messy. It's not uncommon. I mean, you can aggregate. There's opportunities to pull together, because when you're talking about an economic development project, just to give you a sense of scale, the large mega project's 1,000 plus acres, and there's a lot of activity in that regard, but not every project is that large. On average, we're looking 50, 60, 70 acres, give or take, for some of your medium-sized manufacturing projects. Well, for sites that are larger than that, you get to pull together 10, 15 landowners. It gets to be almost insurmountable to try to make a site out of that. And so that's a whole other factor that we look at when we say sometimes we find out that a great piece of property that would work is in a trust, but that trust has 22 individuals associated with it. That also can be very messy. So these are some things that we consider because we want at the end of the day this to be obtainable or achievable. So we identify these properties and then we go through a local review. We don't just throw them over the fence, and we don't just ask the opinion of the economic developer about these properties that we identify in each county. So we conducted a review session in Clay County. This would include not only from an economic development perspective, but also planning and zoning, drainage, engineering. In some cases, we bring in the tax assessor. We want multiple perspectives from the county to lend some insight into whether or not a piece of property, they have the collective opinion, would be a good land use for the intensity for something like an economic development project, where it's low intensity, warehouse distribution, freight logistics, business park, R&D tech, medical, or something that's more heavy intensive through agribusiness, up into including heavy industrial manufacturing. So those perspectives are important so that you have the elimination of these sites that shouldn't be considered. And then from there, it becomes a local function because a lot of the property that we identify is not necessarily known to be on the market. And so there's a landowner engagement process just to get interest on the part of landowners to put their property for sale or lease, such that you can check the box to move on to the due diligence phase. And this is very informal. This is not where you secure a real estate purchase option agreement. The idea is just to gauge initial interest. And then from there, we want to move to preliminary due diligence. That's where we really begin to study the site. We want to expose any fatal flaw, as we talk about in economic development, that would create a problem or a serious risk factor for a developer. You don't want to wait until the prospect is doing a site visit for those things to become discovered. You want to find out about them. In some cases, they're severe enough that that site should be no longer considered for development. In some cases, they can be managed, but it's just good to know about and what it would take to mitigate those challenges. And then we go through advancement to market has more to do with making sure that the site is properly aligned. The state of Florida has some pretty onerous requirements if you're going to go through a land use amendment and ultimately to get a property zoned so that it matches its intensity of use. So that's important as well. Ultimately, having the property under control, where the county, whether it's through the county or an economic development organization, in an agreement with the landowner for a real estate purchase option agreement for an agreed upon price that hopefully is within reasonable proximity of fair market value to be competitive. Formal due diligence. At some point, if you've gone through these exercises, you should have a pretty high degree of confidence that the site would survive boots on the ground. And that's where local consultants, your engineering firms, surveyors, environmental consultants, where through the site development programs, there's money to actually go out and survey those properties. You've got to walk the property and gather hard data to support all the facts that were done in a desktop study. So ultimately, you've got the ability to back up the competitive claims about the property. And then ultimately, branding and marketing at that point becomes something that you can stand on, literally. And when we talk about that, I've seen examples of, you've seen 3D rendered buildings where someone can take and visualize what a developed piece of property would look like. And I've seen that done on property that literally is a swamp. And so from an engineering perspective, it looks nice, right? But the hard engineering, the hard studies haven't been done to do a footprint that understand that this particular buildable area would support that building. And so then when you invest in branding and marketing, you have the hard data, which is what site consultants and industry prospects really want, to defend the competitive claims of the property. So it's very important. We have lots of different land uses. So when we look at SSI, there's acreage thresholds, as I mentioned, from smaller sites all the way to mega sites, depending on intensity of use. But then within inside of that, very important, I know this sounds sort of obvious, but we see 400-acre sites, total 400 acres, being marketed as 400-acre sites. when in a lot of respects you've got challenges that you're trying to avoid, if it's terrain or topography issues or potential wetlands, et cetera, and you might be relegated to 70, 100 acres, maybe a quarter of the site that's actually developable. So that's something that we focus heavily on, is what's the contiguous buildable area as the least amount of impediments for development, so that you can be more accurate in how you're promoting and responding to RFIs or requests for information when someone's looking for a 400-acre site. And so we get into the study of the sites, which we're now in the process through a DEO grant with Clay County. Clay County has good property to start with. I mean, it's evidenced by some of the expanse of the project wins. But for every project that you win, obviously you deplete an asset. And so the idea is that we want to make sure that you're investing in replenishing those real estate assets for economic development uses, and going through the study process so that we have what we consider to be, on face value, some competitive property. We can put through those studies to quantify the engineering and environmental, cultural resource, community challenges, et cetera. Some of the metrics that we look at through the reporting process would also include, when you talk about industry targets, which Clay County being situated within a drive time of a large population area is good, because you want to look at occupational categories that fit within the types of industry targets that you're looking to attract. So it's not just entirely about the dirt. The other thing I mentioned about compatibility with surrounding land use. The intensity of use is very important. We want to make sure that just because the dirt would support a particular use doesn't mean it makes sense to put it there. And so that's another element of this as well, to make sure that you have that land use compatibility. And then again, the idea of moving a site through the stages to make sure that it's ready for development. It's very important to have sites that are zoned properly. And that's something that can be already in agreement, or it can be a political challenge. It can be a challenge with the community. But these are things that need to be discussed in an open context to make sure that you have the support for the types of projects. Your elected officials at the county commission level or at the municipal level, it's so important to have an understanding of the value of these properties to increase jobs and tax revenues, but also to have the political support where you may need to go through it can be contentious, as you can appreciate, if you have to go through a rezoning process with the public. And so the political support part of this is extremely important. Just to end on some examples, I want to show you that there are a lot of good property out there that's being marketed. And these are some real stories from experiences that I've had with site selection over the years and at home in our own state and others, where you've got a property that was one of the last remnants of a large industrial tract that had rail access and Mississippi River access for major industrial development. And if you look, it's hard to see in this image, but because of lack of zoning preservation, this site, they didn't protect it, and they built a high school in the middle of it. I mean, the high school could have gone in probably about 15 other places. This is real. I mean, this happened. You've got another site that on face value looks like that there's good development area, but only to find out that through the process of discovery, you had a pipeline. The prospect needed access to 24-inch natural gas, a high volume of natural gas on MCF per day. We have it. Well, of course you have it, but it runs right through the middle of the site. You can't, I mean, this is obvious. This was not discovered until the prospect was on site. We had another property that was ideal for a project that needed a dock for barge traffic, only to find out that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had a federally designated no anchorage area along the frontage at this particular reach of the river. Not understood until after the prospect was there. And I can go through more of these. This was one that on a site that had good buildable area, but ultimately, and this was known, this wasn't a surprise. There was a formal hazardous waste storage facility, permitted and closed. It had been remediated, okay? No letter of no further action and all that good stuff. But groundwater flow and other things, and when you consider the legacy and history, why, unless that's the last piece of dirt in your county, what company wants the liability of locating there? And yet they bought the property, and which is south of this hazardous waste area, bought the property and marketed it as an industrial site. 20 years ago, it's still vacant. And I can go on with more and more of these. The idea is that you want to be ready and prepared. And again, I'm going to echo what Destin said. Now more than ever, you're really running out of time. And what I mean by that is the trajectory the economy is on. Nobody has a crystal ball, but I'm going to put my odds and I'm going to lay my dollar bill down on manufacturing. Domestic manufacturing in this country is going to continue, and the competition is incredibly stiff. There are millions of dollars mentioned being invested, and also in land acquisition. That's not something that we're not going to get into that today, but I wasn't a proponent of that, and I'm starting to change my tune about the public ownership of property so that it can be controlled. And then when you know that you make an investment in utilities, for example, that the landowner isn't going to turn around and decide to develop it for residential development, which you need. I mean, every community needs housing. It is incredibly important, affordable housing, but to be smart about where that and as it competes for property that produces sustainable tax revenues and good jobs. Some of the products that we have that go along with this, site profiles, it's just kind of a 4-pager that shows you the tail of the tape about a specific piece of property, what the economic vitality looks like in and around the region, some of the specific metrics in and around the site itself, qualitatively. The purpose of this is really to get someone's interest, to attract their interest long enough for them to ask more questions, for Crawford's phone to ring, for someone to say, hey, can we meet with you? We want to go see this site. Can you give us more information about it? The other thing I mentioned is about looking at NAICS codes. Can we take industry targets that make sense for Clay County, for your community, ones that you know that the community will support in terms of intensity of use, your labor will support it, and your dirt will support it. And then ultimately put together matched industry sectors by NAICS codes to go out and not just wait for the phone to ring, but do some proactive lead generation as well to put packages together to attract the right companies to the right dirt within the community. So if you distill it all down, at the end of the day, the SSI program is really about making sure that your real estate assets for economic development will compete nationally and give you that advantage when the opportunities present themselves. Thank you.
Well, today's luncheon was called Economic Development 3 Easy Lessons. I hope you all got that. We will give you a test as you walk out the door to review how you develop sites and get ready to market for economic development. So that, in a nutshell, is site development, which we are working toward in Clay County. Today was supposed to be an educational process to bring kind of some of the community leadership and the community elected officials and civic leaders just to say, hey, this is what goes into what we are trying to do. We tried to give it to you kind of quick, kind of easy, but this is what we're moving toward and what we need to move toward as a community to be competitive, as Victor said, in the state, but also on a national level, because when companies and when companies are looking, they're not usually looking at a specific city or county. They're usually looking at a region. And when I say region, I mean, it could be Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. They could need to be in the Southeast. They could be looking at Georgia, be looking at Texas. And then from there, the relationship with Enterprise Florida and the state agencies and our regional partners to say, hey, there's a couple of sites in Northeast Florida. Clay County's got a site. Duval might have a site. Nassau might have a site. That's kind of in economic development, the idea is you got a funnel, and the funnel has 40 possible locations on it, and you start working through the process, and the funnel gets tighter and tighter. I make the analogy a lot of times when you're relocating or moving and you want to buy a house, the first question is, where do we want to be? What school district do we want to be in? What area do we want to be in? And you start funneling down, where do you want to look for your house? And it's the same thing when businesses start looking around. So I do want to thank you for coming today. I know this was kind of an in the weeds, kind of a grassroots sort of conversation today. We do want to thank CCDA for being a sponsor. We want to thank Powers Development Group for being a sponsor. We want to thank the cities, the municipalities, and the county for being here today, the elected officials. Also want to kind of say thank you to our board who let us continue to do these presentations to bring the community up to speed. So we do appreciate our board allowing us to do that. Stephanie is probably sitting outside. She is on loan to us to help, and she does an excellent job of that. And to Laura for doing an exceptional job of pulling all this together and making it happen. So Laura holds so many pieces of the puzzle together, and thank you very much for everything you do. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for being here. Have a great weekend.